You can tell Hawkeye fans are ready for the season. The infighting is happening on message boards. Are there real concerns about Mark Gronowski and how he's going to look at the beginning of the year? We break it down today. Locked on Hawkeye.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. I've been covering the Hawkeyes for over 20 years on the radio here in the state of Iowa, a lifelong Iowan and a proud Hawkeye fan, and glad to have you aboard with us here today. We're going to talk a little bit about the Leadership Council that has been awarded for this season, some of the players on that list, some veterans, some new guys, and we will get into that a little bit later on in the show. We'll also be joined by Elliot Clough from 24/7 Sports, HawkeyeInsider.com. Elliot will join us with the latest intel that he has on what's happening in Iowa football fall camp. We'll break things down with Elliot coming up here a little bit later on. But speaking of Elliot, speaking of Hawkeye Insider, and speaking of message boards in general, the fighting is happening, and you can tell definitely Hawkeye fans right now are ready for this season to begin. Now, this is kind of a rite of passage each and every year. I personally have been somebody that's been on message boards since 1997, the first one that I came across, as I show my age here. Yes, that was a very, very long time ago, kids. And the old Big Ten fan forums, the first time I ever saw a message board. And it was, well, just that, Big Ten fans going back and forth, a different looking Big Ten than it is certainly today. But at that time, this is what's going to happen as you get closer and closer to the season. Now, the information on those message boards, sometimes there's reasoning behind it. Other times, there's nothing at all. But over the last few days, there's been a couple of things out there about Mark Gronowski maybe having some issues, not being as sharp as maybe Hawkeye fans would be hoping for. And you can take that a myriad of different ways. Look, if you were watching preseason football on Monday night and you saw Joe Burrow and heard from Joe Burrow and talking about what they're working to do and ironing out the kinks. I go back to Sunday night and what you saw from the Bears and Caleb Williams, who at times looked dreadful during camp, and then went out there and played an incredible game. Yes, preseason game, but played incredible on that first drive of the season for him that he had. It's still preseason. And though that's preseason football in the NFL, this is preseason here for these guys. And when you hear these reports, because I mentioned it to you guys here a couple of times over the last few weeks, as there's been a few of those moments that certainly out of the gate, Mark Gronowski was a little bit slower than maybe some people thought. And it takes me back to my expectations for him, and why I do think I need to pump the brakes a little bit. And talked about this last week and every day is, we've had this conversation. But when I look at what this is going to look like right away, what it's going to look like this season, getting this passing game up and running at an even C+ level, B- level, you go through the numbers. And I also got a kick as there was a report today. Well, it wasn't really a report, and it's not to knock on Pete Nakos over at On3, one of their national reporters, and he does great work himself of breaking all kinds of news happening and is deep into the recruiting world. But he puts out a tweet today. Iowa expected to tap South Dakota State transfer QB Mark Gronowski for week 1. And I said, Pete, tell us something we don't know. I mean, this is not news. We all knew this. And even with what we've heard from Tim Lester, that Hank Brown had an incredible camp, that Jeremy Hecklinski, the Wake Forest transfer, has done a great job of acclimating himself into it. This is not a surprise. We know that Mark Gronowski is the guy. But what is a baseline? And as I was going through that article, Iowa hasn't had a quarterback throw for more than 10 touchdowns in a season since 2019. Since that time, Iowa quarterbacks have thrown 38 touchdowns and 37 interceptions. And even with the shortened season of 2020, we're still talking about 5 years of football. And those are the numbers that they've trotted out. Is it going to be better? It has to be. I mean, it just absolutely has to be better. However, what does that look like? What does that mean? What is better? And I think a big component of that, just being able to do the little things, the things that you take for granted on almost every other level of football. But it's been so difficult for Iowa and what we've seen and how snake bitten Hawkeye fans have been at the quarterback position. I think for the people that go down the path of Mark Gronowski, we got damaged goods. We went through this again. We went through this whole song and dance with Cade McNamara. And he came in after a bunch of injuries at Michigan, which he did. He gets injured in that first Kids Day practice in 2023. He comes back. He wasn't ready. And then eventually he tears his ACL and he's out for the year. And then he comes back and he's not able to go through spring practice. He's not able to make everything that you want in spring and summer because he's coming off an injury. And we saw last year he was bad and he was banged up again. And then he quit. I mean, all these things happen throughout the course of the season a year ago. You get it. You have this damage. We all have this scar tissue as Hawkeye fans of the quarterback play and the bottom barrel that we've had. And I get the trepidation when it comes to Gronowski. And then you couple it with these reports that are out there, concerns. A lot of it could be BS. I mean, a lot of these, they're just that. They're rumors. Nobody is sourcing it. It's just what we're hearing. And the same thing that I do. Like, I don't have sourcing on this. It's not people that I can throw out there because people will get in trouble if I attach their name to it. That's not what we do. But we pass it along to you. And with Gronowski, it leads me back. Expectations probably got to a level that aren't fair. He's not going to throw for 3,500 yards. He's not going to throw for 25 touchdowns this year. But can he throw for 2,000? I mean, that's been a mark that Iowa hasn't been able to get to. And if he's healthy for 12 regular season games and he doesn't get to 2,000 yards passing, we got another set of issues. Can he throw for 18 touchdowns? Like 1.5 a game. Get the completion percentage up over 65%, approaching that 67, 68%. And now we're talking again. But reevaluating where we are. Reevaluating what this is going to look like. The excuses, they need to be done. It's year number 2 of the offensive system. Now, a quarterback that was wanted. A quarterback that absolutely, Tim Lester, Kirk Ferentz. I mean, the praise that Kirk has thrown out to Mark Gronowski. This is different, much different, even than what we heard with McNamara. And he was very highly talking about him also when he was brought in. But it's there. The opportunity's there. But now reevaluating what it's going to look like. We're going to talk to Elliot Kloff. He's got some reports coming in from what he has seen on the front of Iowa football and what he's heard about. We're going to get into that a little bit deeper on who is going to be the left tackle. What's his report on Mark Gronowski? We'll talk about that and a whole lot more. Plenty of Iowa football talk with you here today on this edition of Locked On Hawkeyes. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up, and college football isn't far behind. Whether you got your eye on a big-name quarterback, breakout running backs, PrizePicks makes it easy to get in on the game. Look, I absolutely love my Bears. I haven't had much to be excited about, but I mentioned earlier, the Caleb Williams hype machine, boy, it revved up in a big-time way on Sunday. You can take a look at your favorite players, your favorite teams, and find something that you like with PrizePicks. PrizePicks, simple to play. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. PrizePicks also puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Download the PrizePick app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege. You're going to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, run your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by DripDrop. When I'm on top of my hydration, I notice everything works better. My energy, my mood, my focus, even my skin. But getting enough fluids every day isn't always easy. That's why I've been loving DripDrop. DripDrop is doctor-developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. My go-to favorite right now, I love the lemonade mix. It is a game changer after a workout. Those extra busy days, love the lemon lime flavor. It is absolutely tremendous and keeps me going all day long. In fact, I keep a couple extra packets in my backpack for work. Save me more than once from that midday crash. Right now, DripDrop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to DripDrop.com and use the code LOCKEDONCollege. That's promo code LOCKEDONCollege at DripDrop.com. Promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. Trent Condon back with you once again on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day, as we are joined by Elliot Clough from 24/7 Sports.
Let's get to Elliot Kloff. He covers Iowa for 24/7 Sports, HawkeyeInsider.com. Elliot, Trent, and Ken, thank you again for joining us this week. Appreciate you coming on. I want to start with kind of a question that I've been asking most of our Hawkeye guests over the last little while. When it comes to the Hawkeye football schedule, you can't say Penn State or Oregon. But what's a potential game that seemingly everybody's looking past, but in your mind, for whatever reason, right or wrong, that this game thinks might deserve a little bit closer look? What would that game be, Elliot?
Yeah, Ken. The 5 games on this schedule, those 2 that you mentioned, Oregon, Penn State, are definitely the headliners when you first look at the schedule. After that, I look at 3 separate games. First one's going to be probably USC, because California's never been kind to Kirk Ferentz.
True.
Or really the Iowa football program in the last 50 years. That's one game that sticks out. I almost look at that one. We still have a lot to learn about. Well, one, this Iowa team, but USC too. And I almost look at that one as an automatic loss. UCLA was not that good last year, and Iowa went out there and laid an egg in that game. Of course, Jay Higgins getting hurt didn't help. But then you look at Indiana, which last time they came to Kinnick, Iowa just crushed them even with Michael Penix at the helm. But this is a different team with Kurt Cignetti. I think Fernando Mendoza is very legit coming over from Cal. And then lastly, Iowa State. Obviously, Iowa State hasn't beaten Iowa under Matt Campbell in Ames since Campbell took over. But we're about to release our season predictions on 24/7. We're doing that tomorrow, myself, Dave, and Sean. And I think I'm probably going to be the only one picking Iowa State in that game. But that's one that could definitely dictate the season. We saw that last year. That team was looking to hopefully make the CFP, and then losing that game, well, the air kind of went out of the stadium in a way, even though it was early on in the season. And they lost that game to Ohio State, Michigan State, UCLA. It just was a season that kind of ended up being a disappointment. So I would say in order of import, Iowa State probably up there. But Indiana, I feel like Indiana's a game in terms of just overlooking it. Indiana's got to be up there because, they lose their starting quarterback. They had a really easy schedule last year, but they bring back a really solid defense. They got a really good quarterback coming over in Mendoza. So it's got to be Indiana to me in terms of a game that I think people are overlooking.
Offensively, deep running back room, feels like they have a bunch of receivers. Not sure if they're top end, but there's at least competent guys out there. The one question remains left tackle. Is this Trevor Lauch's job? Would it take a monstrous upset to not see him go out there and not get the opening snaps of the season out at left tackle?
At this point, that's my read of it. That's kind of what we're hearing behind the scenes, is that it's Lauch's job to lose at this point. That and conjecture around Lauch being the more high end guy, the guy with more potential, I think is pushing him up there towards the top too. It also, something that is kind of a secondary story on that front is it may very well push Jack Dotzler to being the backup at right tackle and getting him maybe some reps this year if Jennings Dunker's injuries continue, or his injury this offseason, it continues to linger. And that also preps Jack Dotzler to take over right tackle next season, with Clough presumably as your starter going into next year as well at left tackle. So to me, it's Clough's job to lose at this point. And he kind of fits the mold of what Iowa is right now, and like more or less what they have been. Is their strength's going to be running the ball. Their strength is going to be the play action pass, and he kind of falls into that mold alongside the Jennings Dunker, the Logan Jones, the Bo Stevens. So not only the high end point of him being a 4-star recruit who had offers from Ohio State and Michigan, but also the fact that he just kind of fits the mold right now of what they want to do. He's not a prototypical left tackle size, and of course he's going to have his struggles being in his first year starting. But it is Clough's job, at least from what I can tell right now.
What have you heard? And I don't think you guys have an coach availability this week. So where's Moulton and Patterson, both of whom were nicked up, as far as their availability for the Albany game? Do we expect both of them to play?
For right now, I would say so. If Patterson, as far as I know, he's good to go. Washington was the one that sat out for Kids Day,
okay.
And he's been one that's been banged up a little bit. We might see, a good chunk of those young running backs, just so the guys that are upper towards the top can get a little healthy. Like I said, as far as I know, Jazz Patterson is going to be good to go. But if they do sit out, if they do, rest, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me for that first week, because Albany's terrible. Like, if we're being real, they've been a program that has been good in recent memory against FCS or in the FCS, but with the amount of turnover that they've had, as far as the roster, new head coach, like it should be just a win based on talent and size and ability to recruit alone for Iowa, one of those games. So it wouldn't shock me if, Moulton and Washington just stay sidelined for that first game. As far as the timeline, I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be that much of a surprise to see some of those younger guys like Xavier Williams, who we've heard good things about, like Nathan McNeil, who may very well burn his red shirt in year one. But having Jazz Patterson out there probably to lead the group, if that, scenario does come to fruition, will provide a little bit of confidence in a guy that's been there, done that, and that we know is really hard to tackle. So, like I said, I don't really know the timeline with those top two guys, but it also wouldn't surprise me if they're back and ready to go. Some of those injuries and off-season nicks and bruises can be a little tricky, but it would, not season ending by any means at all for those top guys.
All right, Elliot, it's time to have the Mark Gronowski question. It's a prerequisite as we talk about the quarterback position at Iowa. Kids Day saw some good things, also some things that maybe kind of leave you scratching. There's been some reports that are out there, including you guys at Hawkeye Insider. This hasn't been 100%, right? It hasn't been perfect by any means. Him coming off the injury, understanding the new offense, all the things. Can you tell us kind of the latest and give us the latest intel that you have on the camp that we've heard from Mark Gronowski?
Yeah, like you said, it hasn't been perfect, and I think expecting it to be perfect isn't, really rational at this point. I mean, bringing a guy in from the FCS and considering, the difficulties of the Cade McNamara era and having those high expectations, it's just not fair. Now, something that I've said to you guys multiple times is that it is a different situation. Mark Gronowski is a different leader in that respect, and he's got the experience. He's done a lot of really good things and did a lot of really good things at South Dakota State. But right, I mean, it's practice in the middle of August. I mean, I don't know how much you guys have heard about the scrimmage that happened this last Saturday, but supposedly Mark didn't play all that great, but it was also 120 degrees on the field. So I'd be surprised if anybody played all that great. The offense has been really focused on the passing game. More reps, more opportunities to make mistakes. So it's going to look less perfect even in that respect, but they are really focusing on that because the run game has been so solid and so good under Tim Lester. And they've got these young guys with experience that have been playing well and picking up the offense. So the focus has really been in the pass game, and it's provided a lot of opportunity for Mark to continue to grow in the respect of building chemistry. And I have heard he's starting to sharpen up a little bit in terms of minimizing the turnovers, minimizing the botched snaps, minimizing those type of things, and hitting more throws with a more consistent basis. is it perfect? Is it, the greatest offense since, I don't know, the run and gun of 2002? Probably not. Like that's a safe bet to say not at this point in time. But they are starting to work some kinks out. And I do still have relatively higher expectations for Gronowski as opposed to maybe other quarterbacks of the last decade. But it's not going to come. It's not going to come without its issues. Like Mark Gronowski is going to throw an interception. There's going to be fumbles this year. Like it's not going to be perfect. But it will be better. And there are going to be struggles at this point in the year. They're really just figuring things out still. And they've got a couple weeks to continue to figure it out. And I do think that the offense is going to get progressively better throughout the fall. So you're going to see some rust, I think, to start the year. But as long as they can get past that Iowa State game and make it unscathed, I think they have a real opportunity to have some serious offensive success this year, particularly in the passing game once they get some of those things worked out.
If he throws a pick in that first series against Albany, oh my gosh.
Yeah, grumbling.
Yeah. Hey, last thing for you, we got about a minute left here, Elliot. When we do get a depth chart, I guess that'll be Monday, right, of next week. Is there an or between Brown and Hecklinski, or does he outright win the backup job? Because I keep hearing good things about Hecklinski, and if he was here in the spring, this thing would be a real fight.
Yeah. I would say if he was in the spring, I would be more inclined to say that there's an or between those two. But right now it's Brown. He's been taking reps with the ones too. They've been splitting reps with him and Mark Gronowski. So, and obviously he didn't look great with the ones at Kids Day, but Brown is really impressed. Like I'm sure you guys have heard the quote from Tim Lester saying he had an unbelievable camp. He's legit. Like we'll probably be talking more about the or who takes over the starting job between those two next year. But for right now, I think it's Brown as the backup, and I think he's pretty firmly the backup. With Hecklinski having basically just arrived, it's just different, right? Like, and there's the age difference. So to me, it's pretty firm that Hank Brown is QB2 for the Hawks.
There he is. He is Elliot Clough, 24/7 Sports, HawkeyeInsider.com. And a big thank you to Elliot, as always, for joining us here on the program and talking all things Hawkeyes as we break down camp and get ready for football season. Well, speaking of getting ready for football season, one of the biggest things that Kirk Ferentz talks about is leadership. The Player Council, it is just that. Who are the players that were named to the Leadership Player Council? We'll talk about that and its importance to Iowa football as we continue. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you needed a service. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need OpenPhone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. Juggling two phones, it is incredibly difficult. I have to do that with the business line, with the personal calls, keeping them separate. Well, OpenPhone solved that instantly. And the AI agent handles after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures leads, so I never miss a customer again. As a small business owner, this has been absolutely huge for me. See why over 60,000 businesses trust OpenPhone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com /LockedOnCollege. That's OpenPhone, OpenPhone.com, openphone.com /LockedOnCollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. OpenPhone. No missed calls, no missed customers. Trent Condon back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Big thank you to everydayers with us each and every day. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button as we continue to try to push towards 5,000 subscribers here on the channel. If you're over on the audio side, 5-star reviews, all of that helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Let's get into the Leadership Player Council. Now, this is something that is important. to Iowa football. Kirk Ferentz, the way that this program is built, and yes, Iowa football is built much differently than a lot of programs out there. And I think there's a couple of interesting names on there. So overall, 15 players that were named to the player counselor. These are the people that get together at different times throughout the course of the year, make a lot of decisions on different things that they need, different things that they're doing. And this is kind of that soundboard that Iowa has. And this dates back to a number of years now, and something that has been implemented, and something that Kirk Ferentz, I think, enjoys, something that he believes is incredibly important. So names on the list that aren't a surprise, guys that we know going to be there. Out of the guys that have stuck around for an extra season, Jennings Dunker, of course, Aaron Graves, Jaden Harrell, Ethan Hurkett, Logan Jones, Hayden Large. All right, those are all guys, not a surprise at all. Another guy that isn't a surprise is Cohen Entringer, because he was at Big Ten Media Days after one career start, something we've never seen in the Kirk Ferentz era. Here's a big one, though, is Mark Gronowski. And Gronowski being on this leadership group, I think, is important. He has acclimated himself incredibly well. And as we've talked about Gronowski and maybe trying to even out those highs that we've hit, and when we were talking about the season that he can have in front of us, being a real leader, not the false bravado that we saw from Cade McNamara, but having Gronowski that gets it and being the kind of leader that Iowa football needs. Look, they've had good leaders at the quarterback spot that are different. Like Nate Staley was not a rah-rah guy. He was not a guy that really said a whole lot. And then he got goofy guys like Ricky Stanzi. And then he got red asses like Drew Tate. And he got somebody that everybody loved in Brad Banks. And you could be a good leader, and he could do it a myriad of different ways. And we've certainly seen that at that position. But for Iowa football, Mark Gronowski is the type, I believe, that works best. A couple other names on the list, some young guys on there. Jaden Montgomery also showed up, who's battling Jaden Harrell for that starting job at the Mike linebacker, middle linebacker spot. Sophomores, Zach Lutmer, another name, shouldn't come as a surprise. We've heard a ton about him. Kamari Moulton. Hopefully Kamari's getting back healthy and close to 100%. Then a couple other guys on the list, veterans, Addison Ostrenga, Jeremiah Pittman, and Jackson Rethrow. So that is your list of 15 guys, but I think the one that certainly jumps out is Gronowski, his short time on campus, being around and being named to that. August 30th, we are counting down the days. We are getting closer and closer. And on tomorrow's edition of Locked On Hawkeyes, we got something a little bit special for you long-timers, you everydayers who have been with us for a long time. You remember my buddy Biz. He is going to be back for the first time for this season, and hopefully something that we can make happen weekly. Biz is going to join us breaking all things down Hawkeye. We'll get his perspective and his opinions, and you don't have to go very far to get an opinion from Biz. That's coming up tomorrow. Hope everybody enjoys that one. A busy week here in front of us as we continue to try to get that information mentioned last week, getting a little bit tighter around the edges, trying to find any little glimmer that we have. Also want to talk a little basketball later in the week as well, as we come to you each and every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Network, your team every day. I got you covered on the Hawkeye front, all the Hawkeye news, all the conversations right here on Locked On Hawkeyes. As always, thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Until then, go Hawks.